Hi, my name is Andy Flesch. I'm the VP of Worldwide Sales here at E8 Storage. Thanks again for having us today. Like other folks that have introduced themselves, I've been in disruptive technologies and these paradigm shifting conversations for the better part of 20 years, including time at Citrix, VMware, Riverbed. I was the general manager of the Americas for a company called Whiptail, which was acquired by Cisco in the early flash wars, if you will.
Dan did a real good job selling that company.
Really I'm excited today to talk to you guys about some of the use cases of our technology. And just as important is to focus on, what we do really well, but we want to make sure that it's very clear what we're not focused on. As a company that's very, very highly focused on bringing the world's fastest appliance to market, it's extremely, important for us to maintain focus, right? And sure that you guys have met with a lot of vendors that talk about all the things they do and how it's a solution for everything. And so I'm hoping that these 4 use cases that I'll show you today will really succinctly show what the main value proposition is for E8 and the types of deployments that we're really focused on. So the first example is a very large financial hedge fund in New York, where I'm from, so you guys could tell pretty quickly probably from my accent. This particular customer is working on an application that does market data, particularly in what they call finding alphas. Unfair advantages, things that can be analyzed to produce, opportunities for the firm. They had tried a variety of different storage solutions. They had tried a network attached storage solution that was 10 times slower than what their requirements were. They then deployed 1,152 local SSDs through 72 servers. And that presented really 2 main challenges to the firm. The first challenge was they had to back up 1,152 servers each day. But the more important challenge that it presented was the fact that they only had a 10 terabyte data set to be able to analyze. By using E8 and the top of the rack shared NVMe solution, we were able to actually allow all 72 servers to connect to 2 E8 boxes, each with 24 NVMe drives in it. We actually were able to maintain, the same, if not faster performance. We're able to give them access to 100 terabytes or even more of data set that actually allow their quants to be able to do their jobs a lot better and actually be able to grow. They didn't have the, islands of storage, people sneaking in local 10 terabyte cards all under their desk, which is obviously difficult for the centralized administrator of their enterprise to be able to manage standards. It's obviously a great use case. They don't need, 100x the number of replicas, and they continue to be a great customer. Another really good example is with SAS, so the data warehouse statistical analysis application. In this particular example, E8 was deployed with IBM Spectrum Scale, or GPFS, the parallel file system, which in this case you could kind of think of E8 as sort of the engine and GPFS as sort of the transmission, if you will, in the sense that GPFS was going to allow us access to file. So we're obviously a storage block device, and SAS leverages file. In the case of this particular use case, and some of the customers that have tested it, we were actually allowed 4x the performance than the local SAS SSDs. We improved the time to be able to analyze records by 3 to 4x. So we had one particular banking institution that was able to take their entire SAS workload from 16 hours down to 4 hours, right? Instead of having to have multiple copies, multiple replicas, multiple uploads, they were able to have, over 100 terabytes, even close to 140 terabytes shared. That allows them to grow. It also allowed them to be able to access older information that they weren't able to access in the past. So, access older information, they have more performance, they have more data, and it really gave them a huge reduction in the amount of time that they needed to analyze all the applications that leverage this data warehouse. Another customer is called the Perfect Processor. This is a merchant service company in the payment and payroll industry. The Perfect Processor is an organization that competes mainly with some of the largest credit card companies in the world, the Amexes and Discovers of the world, and their primary challenge was meeting the demand of their growing business. They had an infrastructure to support about the 5 million credit cards, so being able to provision about 5 million with an existing SQL backend. By leveraging Oracle RAC and E8, they were able to set up an infrastructure that would allow them to get beyond 100 million cards, right? Not only was the issue in the ability to provision these merchant service accounts and credit cards for their companies, but also the performance when using them. This is a great example of how E8 can really accelerate both an Oracle single instance and in this case, an Oracle RAC environment. So you know organizations today spend millions and millions of dollars on things like Exadata and other very expensive ways to improve the performance of their Oracle. And E8 becomes a great solution for being able to do that. And finally, one of the other great examples of E8 is with the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange in terms of high frequency trading and really meeting the volume trading demands of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. So the issue is not only trying to find a more denser solution than the local RAM, that's 13 dedicated servers that they had, but also keeping up with the amount of demand that they have. They have tremendous growth of the volume and the amount of trades that are executed. And what E8 was allowed them to do was actually leverage the Intel Optane architecture. So in this case, we're able to take 13 servers with RAM cache and be able to move it to a single E8 box with 24 Intel Optanes. And obviously this storage class memory type of solution was able to improve the density by 10x and actually decrease the cost by 50x. So improved performance, improved density, lower cost. That's it. You guys have any questions?
So you've just given some great examples about where it is good. Mm-hmm. You said you're going to give us some examples where it wasn't, or some
sure.
areas where it wouldn't.
Yeah. So obviously we've been talking about what you would consider, your tier 0, tier 1 type workload. Requires a lot of IOPS, requires low latency and high throughput. The types of applications where we are not a fit because we either don't support the environment or it's not needed would be things like Windows environments. Things like environments that are conducive to being deduped, object storage, cloud-based storage. We really are focused on, Linux environments, running IBM Spectrum Scale, running Oracle, running market data, and really any of those sort of, tier 2, tier 3 applications would not be a fit.
And does that make it difficult as a sale then, because those are harder to find, or is that a growing market that you feel is ripe for a solution?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned in all of those disruptive categories I described before, it's that focus is the key. So what we've tried to do is define what we call our green zone, our yellow zone, and our red zone. Our green zone are the things that we've been describing today that work well. We have customers using them in production. And that's the other key point I wanted to emphasize, not to belabor the point, but these are production references, right? This isn't the lab, this is, customers running in production. And so when we focus on the folks that are suffering from this compromise, so the primary reason why I joined E8 and the primary focus that we have is on the folks that are making this compromise. In today's world, you have to either have the fastest performance and you're running it locally, or you have less performance and you're running it centrally. And so there's a lot of people out there suffering from this. I highlighted my experience at Whiptail in what I could call the early Flash wars because it was important to understand the folks that keep making that trade-off. They went local and then they went to all flash array and then went back to local. And there's a lot of people out there right now like that. As you can see from the trends that Julie showed, you see, 16% growth in Ethernet and a steady decline in fiber channel. So those are a lot of those same folks that are interested. But the most important thing is we have a very rich roadmap of things that we're coming out with that will allow us to address even more market. But we're not there yet. We've still got plenty of folks that are interested, and I think there's a pretty big service addressable market for us.